And we've asked Jessica to talk a little bit about also AFT nationally. Jessica.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to see everyone. I just a little bit myself. I'm a middle school teacher, and I am very proud right now to represent the Boston Teachers Union. We have about 10,000 members that are both active and retired. And the roles that we represent are varied. So it's actually not just teachers. We also represent paraprofessionals, substitutes, ABAs, school nurses, librarians, paraprofessionals, family liaisons. I'm sure I'm missing some groups, but just to give you a sense of our membership. And so I was asked to speak first a little bit about the AFT's priorities. I am also an AFT vice president, so I have a little bit of a um, closer look and window into some of the work that AFT does as well. But the main campaign is called Real Solutions for Kids and Communities. And it's rejecting the attacks against public education and lays out very specific goals in terms of how to strengthen public schools with specific solutions. And so the kind of landscape we're dealing with right now is, coming out of the pandemic. Uh, a lot of the issues we were already facing before the pandemic were really exacerbated, whether they were racial inequities, economic injustices, et cetera, and certainly the social and emotional wellness of our students. And so trying to address those challenges with real solutions, one of the pillars of the Real Solutions for Kids and Communities campaign is literacy. And so um, just really focusing on literacy and rules-based literacy. Unfortunately, too many of our students were actually not taught reading in the best way. And so in Boston, for example, there's something called equitable literacy, but it's really about ensuring that all educators are given the professional development to teach science-based reading, decoding, having reading interventionists, and evidence-based reading and instructional practices, including culturally relevant curriculum. As Congressman Bowman shared, if you don't see yourself in the curriculum and in your courses, then you could oftentimes disengage from learning too. And so access to culturally relevant books is a part of that campaign. There's also community schools, which is wraparound services for schools and tackling mental health challenges, hunger, language barriers, healthcare, and career supports for families. And in Boston, that's something we just actually negotiated a new agreement for and have been a huge advocate for community schools. In Boston, we actually call them hub schools because when we were advocating for community schools, people would often get them confused with neighborhood schools, which is not the same thing at all. But we are very happy that we now actually have 14 Boston Community Hub schools and have an agreement to expand it to 20 for the next school year. And our hope is to continue to expand that. But the whole idea is it's a strategy for empowering students and families in schools, and that they need to be a part of the decision making and transforming our schools. And then it engages in assets and opportunities assessment. Another prong of the Real Solutions for Kids and Communities is experiential learning, and that is to provide all children the opportunity to learn by doing. So experiential learning, including career and technical education, and vocational schools as well, and preparing students for not only for traditional trades programs, but also in demand careers, for example, healthcare, information technology, skilled manufacturing, et cetera, as well. But also experiential learning and just having more students have more opportunities to have the hands-on learning experiences besides just being in the classroom. And then the last, or there's two more, mental health and well-being. We know that there are so many mental health struggles with our students. I was in a school 2 days ago, and actually we were asking the students, what do they love most about their school? And one of the students actually shared that it was access to her social worker in their school, and her social worker was actually with us, and she started tearing up the student, and then the social worker gave her a big hug, and she was just like, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my social worker available to talk to especially when I'm feeling sad and down and feeling like I'm falling behind in school and have no one else to talk to. And so that's, I think, a huge piece, continuous investments in social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselors, and focus on social emotional mental health. And the last one I don't think is a surprise to anyone is investments in schools and fighting for the investments, whether it's for staffing to include. In Boston, we're really fighting for inclusion done right. That's ensuring that special education inclusion is not done on the cheap, that we have not just one teacher with 3 licenses providing ESL, Gen Ed, and special education services, but that our students who are special education and multilingual learners have the services they need that are fully staffed. And then also we need better facilities. When I was on a school visit this week, the students also pointed out that in her math class, like the teacher has to put buckets underneath the radiator because it leaks, and she has to dump out the water every week. I mean, for too long, there's been a disinvestment in facilities, and for too long, our students have been in schools that have not been well maintained, are not, modern, clean, green school buildings that they should be. And so, that's the last piece of the Real Solutions for Kids and Communities framework. And those are all things that we are working on in Boston too, specifically through our contract negotiations, which is what we're in the middle of right now, of negotiating. And so I think I know I'm supposed to do like 4 minutes. I think I'm getting close to the end there, so I can stop there. But these again are all things that we are working on locally as well. The one last thing I'll mention specifically about Boston is that we are working with the MTA, and this is going to be my segue to pass it off to Max, of the Thrive Act. Because while we are trying to fight for all these solutions, we continuously are under threat, particularly in Boston, of receivership, where the state takes over either a school or a whole district. And that has not worked. It's very undemocratic. It has just, if you look at the data, it is not a strategy that works. The test scores actually, came out recently, and the district that's doing the worst is the one that actually has been under district receivership for like the longest period of time. And then we were able successfully in Boston to fight off the threat of receivership, and we just actually came out of the bottom 10%, so they can't threaten that anymore. But it already did a lot of harm for 2 of our schools that are under receivership. But also just the threat of it constantly forced the district to do some things that were really not in the best interest of either special education or English language learners or multilingual learners. And so that continuous threat of trying to link the high stakes testing to punitive consequences has been really harmful to our district. And that's why we're advocating for and fighting for the Thrive Act. So, and then I will pass it over to Max. And
Right.
Max, I think I gave you a soft, what's it called?
Well, I'm going
Pass.
to take that softball and pass it to
Yeah.
Deb. Deb is going to be presenting for us.
Okay,
All right,
sorry.
So thank you, Jessica, and we're so glad that we have you in the leadership there. And good luck going forward. So we're very pleased now to have the other wing of Masters Teachers. Deb McCarthy is the Vice President of Mass Teachers Association, and then we're actually going to have as our actual closer Max Page, the President. So Deb, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deb McCarthy, a 5th grade educator for 25 years in the town of Howe. I have been fighting this high stakes racist testing regime for more than a decade now. And several years ago, after the pandemic, when everyone said that we shouldn't be given the MCAS, and yet we did, I became a conscientious objector and refused to give it for 2 years, and then left the classroom to take on this issue. I'm here to talk about the ballot question / Thrive Act and some of the steps that you can take, but I just wanted to lift up 2 things from the wonderful presentations that you heard today, Dan French, your slide, where you identify 47% of EL learners not getting a diploma. And we know that DESE has decided to increase the cutoff score. And with the increase of newcomers, it feels like that threshold is going to be more than 50%. And we talk a lot about racial, social, economic, and gender justice. But if ever there were a time to lift up educational justice, now is the moment. And then it was Lou, when you were talking about a student who expressed the desire to take his own life. I just want to share like the urgency of this issue. When we had our signatures certified in the fall, a neighbor happened to see something on the TV and came over and introduced and shared that she works in a collaborative in Massachusetts and they don't have a union. And they give the test to students who are dying in their collaborative. And she was talking about how the woman that she worked with this last school year decided that they didn't care if they were going to get fired. They weren't going to give it because they knew the parents were going to get the scores after this particular girl had lost her fight with her illness. So the urgency around this educational justice issue couldn't be any more pressing. And the 4 actions that I'm going to just ask that you consider taking if you're here in Massachusetts, we're going to begin our second round of collecting signatures starting May 4th. We need to get an additional 12,000 and we have 6 weeks to do so. We have locals who are working in coalition with their school committees and parents, and they're passing resolutions. A real significant one was passed last week in Fall River, where the leader of the Massachusetts Business Alliance used to be a school committee member. And this was a really powerful action that just took place. We have forums that have been led recently by Kathy Greeley and Lisa Giesborn. They did a great one in Cambridge, and if you're interested in it, please reach out. And then the other action that has been taking place is we've had Democratic town committees pass resolutions that they are in support of the ballot initiative. So those are 4 immediate steps that you can engage in political action with to help us here in Massachusetts. And as always, you can always send an email or reach out. And I thank you for a wonderful, wonderful day here.
Thank you. All right. Max, are you still with us?
I'm here.
All
Thanks.
right. Well, why don't you get us complete
Good.
the marching
Closing up
orders.
in 1 minute. Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Max Page. I'm the
You got as many
Our
minutes
team.
as you need.
with Deb McCarthy. I'm the president of the Mass Teachers Association. We represent 117,000 members across public schools and colleges in Massachusetts. And the closeout I'll say is, because I know there's people from all over. I mean, we have a particular battle going on right now. And what I wanted to say, and I said in our small breakout group, that I think partly what energizes us and what energizes a broader group of students, parents, and community members is that we're not just fighting about a test, we're fighting about a different vision of education, a liberatory education, where we're bringing in students to become happy, healthy, productive, civically minded, creative adults. And that's not what a high stakes testing regime imagines. It's very much focused on a narrow set of skills that some business leaders or some ed reformers have in mind as some ideal education. But we, in fighting, whether it's fighting the graduation requirement or fighting for a more holistic assessment system, we are imagining a different kind of public education system that treats students as full human beings who we want to be full, learning, creative, active human beings the rest of their lives. and that is in some ways so obvious to students and to parents. I have 3 kids who went to the Amherst Public Schools, and when we send them there every morning, that's what we're hoping, is that they're going to be kind of co-parenting, lifting up our young people in many different ways. And the system we've set up that has been established is so deadening to that goal. And so that's what I hope is as you go forward and whatever the battles are, whether you're fighting on this, to keep that in mind. And I really I urge everyone to keep up the good fight. And I think we are going to come to a good conclusion one way or the other in Massachusetts, whether by June or on November 8th, whatever election day is this year. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Max and Deb and Jessica, for being with us. We may not be hundreds of thousands as the union is, but we're a hearty crowd and engaged. And we're going to try to put everybody who registered for this conference, we will send them information on how to connect to the referendum campaign, to the Thrive Act, et cetera. Massachusetts and New York are kind of in the lead here. We might actually have a kind of joint Books Not Bombs committee, given Representative Bowman in New York. But don't trash our emails immediately. Make a Books Not Bombs folder and put our emails in those folders. At that, I'd like to thank everybody for participating. Very generous of you to give up an early spring Saturday afternoon. And we're very pleased that at the presentations, everybody learned a lot. And this is not the end, this is the beginning of broadening these campaigns that Deb talked about. So thank you very much and have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Closing the meeting shortly. Thank you, everyone.